Reports claim King Charles has opened talks with Prince Harry and Meghan over a possible family meeting in the UK with hopes of seeing Archie and Lilibet. Now, before we dive into all the details, let's make one thing absolutely clear. Our support has always been with Prince Harry and Meghan, not with palace spin, not with anonymous royal briefings, and certainly not with the tabloid machine that has spent years profiting from division. So if Harry and Meghan decide to meet King Charles, we'll support that decision. If they decide that now isn't the right time, we'll support that too. They are the ones who have lived this story. They are the ones who understand the private conversations, the pain, the history, and what's best for their family. No newspaper columnist, royal expert, or television commentator gets to make that decision for them. With that said, today's reports are impossible to ignore. According to a new exclusive report, King Charles has reportedly instructed senior aides to begin ongoing discussions with the Duke and Duchess of Sussex in an effort to arrange a family meeting in the United Kingdom. The report goes even further, claiming that the king hopes the meeting could happen within days and that it could eventually lead to an emotional reunion with his grandchildren, Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet. Now, it is very important to stress that these claims have not been officially confirmed by Buckingham Palace or by representatives for Harry and Meghan. At this stage, this is a developing story based on media reporting, and as always, we'll separate confirmed facts from speculation. But here's why this story has immediately captured everyone's attention. For years, the public has been told that reconciliation was virtually impossible. We heard endless predictions that Harry and Meghan had burned every bridge. Every visit Harry made to the UK was accompanied by headlines insisting there would be no meaningful contact with his family. Every interview, every court appearance, every public engagement seemed to generate another wave of stories claiming the relationship was beyond repair. And yet, if these latest reports are accurate, something significant may have changed behind the scenes. Instead of hearing about closed doors, we're suddenly hearing about conversations. Instead of hearing about permanent silence, we're hearing about ongoing discussions between senior aides. Whether those discussions ultimately lead anywhere remains to be seen, but the fact that such reports are emerging at all is enough to spark a completely different conversation. What's also worth remembering is that Harry has never hidden the fact that he wanted reconciliation. He has spoken publicly about hoping for healing within his family. But he has also made something equally clear. Reconciliation cannot come at the expense of truth, accountability, and the well-being of the family he has built with Meghan. That distinction matters. Wanting peace does not mean pretending the past never happened. Wanting a relationship does not mean accepting the same circumstances that caused so much hurt in the first place. Harry has repeatedly demonstrated that his first responsibility is to Meghan, Archie, and Lilibet. That has been consistent from the moment they stepped back as senior working royals. Whatever decisions they make moving forward will almost certainly be guided by one simple question: what is best for our family? And honestly, that's exactly how it should be. So today, we're going to examine what this report actually says, what it doesn't say, why this alleged breakthrough is generating so much discussion around the world, and whether this could represent the beginning of a genuine new chapter or simply another round of royal speculation. Because one thing is certain, when it comes to Harry and Meghan, we've all learned not to jump to conclusions. So let's get into it. Let's start with the biggest question everyone is asking. Why now? Because if you followed this story over the last 5 years, you'll know that we've heard countless predictions from royal commentators who claimed Harry and Meghan would never be part of any meaningful family discussions again. How many times have we been told the relationship was beyond repair? How many headlines declared Harry had crossed the line? How many so-called insiders insisted that the palace had completely shut the door? Apparently, quite a lot. Yet today's reports paint a very different picture. According to these claims, it's not Harry asking for a meeting. It's not Meghan launching some campaign to get back into royal circles. Instead, the report suggests that King Charles has instructed senior aides to begin ongoing discussions in order to find time in his schedule for a possible meeting. Now think about that for a second. If these reports are accurate, then that's a significant difference from the narrative we've been hearing for years. Because for the longest time, certain sections of the British press wanted everyone to believe Harry and Meghan were desperate for acceptance from an institution that had supposedly moved on without them. That storyline generated clicks. It generated outrage. It generated endless television debates. But if these reports are true, then today's story doesn't fit that familiar script at all. Instead, it suggests that communication may be happening because there is interest in opening a dialogue. And that changes the conversation. Now, does that mean every issue has suddenly disappeared? Of course not. Nobody should be pretending that years of pain can simply vanish because of one reported meeting. Let's remember what Harry himself has said over the years. He has spoken openly about losing trust. He has spoken about private conversations becoming public. He has spoken about misinformation, media leaks, and the emotional toll those experiences had, not just on him, but on Meghan as well. Those concerns didn't disappear overnight. Trust isn't rebuilt because a newspaper prints an exclusive. Trust is rebuilt through actions, through consistency, through respect, and perhaps most importantly, through protecting the family Harry and Meghan have created together. That's something many critics seem to overlook. Whenever stories like this emerge, the conversation immediately becomes, will Harry return? Return to what? Harry has his own life. He and Meghan have built a home in California. They're raising Archie and Lilibet away from the relentless media environment that Harry has repeatedly described as harmful. They've launched charitable initiatives. They've signed business partnerships. They've continued their advocacy work. Whether people agree with every decision they've made or not, one fact is undeniable. They have built an independent life. So any meeting, if it happens, shouldn't be viewed through the outdated lens of Harry somehow coming back. That's not what this is about. This would simply be a family conversation. Nothing more, nothing less. Families can have disagreements. Families can become estranged. Families can also attempt reconciliation. Those things happen every day around the world. The difference here is that every private family moment becomes international news because the people involved happen to be members of one of the most famous families on Earth. And that's exactly why Harry has spent years asking for something most of us take for granted: privacy. Imagine trying to have a deeply personal conversation while millions of strangers are debating it online before it even happens. Imagine reading newspaper columns telling you what you should say, who you should forgive, when you should forgive, and under what conditions. It's extraordinary when you think about it. Harry and Meghan don't owe the public every detail of their family relationships. Those decisions belong to them, not to commentators, not to tabloids, and certainly not to people who have spent years criticizing every move they make. That's why, regardless of whether this reported meeting takes place, one principle remains unchanged. Harry and Meghan deserve the freedom to make whatever decision they believe is best for themselves, and, most importantly, for Archie and Lilibet. Because at the end of the day, those two children are no longer babies hidden from public view. They're growing up. Every decision Harry and Meghan make now isn't just about themselves. It's about creating the healthiest environment possible for their children. If that includes carefully rebuilding certain family relationships, that's their choice. If they decide more time is needed before taking that step, that's also their choice. Either way, they don't need permission from the British press. And perhaps that's the biggest shift of all. For years, Harry and Meghan have demonstrated that they're willing to make difficult decisions based on what they believe is right for their family, not on what generates the most favorable headlines. That's a pattern we've seen repeatedly. So while today's reports are certainly intriguing, it's important not to lose sight of the bigger picture. One reported meeting doesn't erase the past. One conversation doesn't magically restore trust, and one headline certainly doesn't tell us everything that's happening behind closed doors. The real story isn't whether a meeting happens. The real story is whether everyone involved is genuinely prepared to move forward in a healthier, more respectful way than before. And that is something only time will reveal. Now, here's another reason this story has captured so much attention. If these reports are true, the circumstances today are completely different from what they were 5 years ago. Back in 2020, when Harry and Meghan stepped back as senior working royals, there was a narrative, pushed relentlessly in some corners, that they wouldn't survive on their own. Critics claimed they would come crawling back, that they would fail without the institution, that independence was impossible. How many times did we hear those predictions? They'll run out of money, they'll be back within a year, they need the royal family more than the royal family needs them. Those headlines were everywhere. Fast forward to today, whether you agree with every decision they've made or not, those predictions simply didn't come true. Harry and Meghan built a life in California. They've continued their charitable work through the Archie&LIlibet Foundation. They've launched projects across media, philanthropy, and business. They've raised their children largely away from the intense public spotlight that Harry has long associated with some of the most painful experiences of his life. Most importantly, they've shown that they are capable of making their own decisions. That independence changes everything. If a meeting takes place now, it wouldn't be because Harry has no other option. It wouldn't be because he needs permission. It wouldn't be because he has nowhere else to turn. If it happens, it would be because he has chosen to have that conversation. There's a world of difference between those two situations. And perhaps that's why this reported development feels so significant. For years, many people framed Harry as someone who would eventually have to compromise simply because he had no alternative. But that's no longer the reality. Today, Harry is a husband, a father, a veteran, a philanthropist, an author, a man who has built a life outside the traditional royal system. That doesn't mean his relationship with his family no longer matters. Of course it matters. Family almost always matters. But it does mean any future relationship would have to exist on a different foundation than before. And that's an important distinction, because reconciliation should never be confused with surrender. Those are two very different things. One is about rebuilding relationships with mutual respect. The other is about one side being expected to simply forget everything that happened. Harry has consistently indicated that he wants the first, not the second. And if you followed his public interviews over the years, that message has been remarkably consistent. He has spoken about wanting accountability. He has spoken about honesty. He has spoken about protecting his wife and children. None of those goals are unreasonable. In fact, many people watching this story have said they would expect exactly the same if they were in his position. Now, there's another aspect of this report that's worth discussing. Notice how much attention is being placed on Archie and Lilibet. For years, some critics questioned whether those children would ever have a meaningful relationship with members of the royal family. Others speculated endlessly about titles, appearances, photographs, and family dynamics. But at the end of the day, Archie and Lilibet aren't public symbols. They're children. And like any children, they deserve loving relationships that are healthy, respectful, and free from unnecessary drama. If Harry and Meghan believe that certain family connections are beneficial for their children, that's entirely their decision. If they believe more trust needs to be rebuilt first, that's also entirely their decision. No one outside that family has enough information to decide that for them. And maybe that's something we've all lost sight of over the years. Not every family discussion needs to become tomorrow's front page headline. So while this reported meeting has understandably generated excitement, it's also a reminder that healing, if that's what everyone genuinely wants, isn't measured by one meeting, one handshake, or one carefully worded statement. Real healing takes time. It takes consistency. It takes trust. And trust is earned, not announced. As this story continues to develop, one thing is becoming increasingly clear. The conversation is no longer about whether Harry and Meghan can stand on their own. They've already answered that question. The conversation now is whether old relationships can be rebuilt in a way that respects the boundaries they've established and the life they've created together. That's a very different discussion, and it's one that deserves far more nuance than the sensational headlines we've become so accustomed to seeing. So the question isn't simply whether this meeting happens. The bigger question is this: if it does happen, what kind of relationship comes after it? Because for Harry and Meghan, this has never been about appearances. It's always been about protecting their peace, their family, and their future. And whatever path they choose from here, that principle is unlikely to change.